Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Also poised to be the beginning of what very well could be a triple header tonight if all lines up perfectly for SpaceX. We'll discuss more about what that will entail in just a moment. But I am, of course, Will Robinson-Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC. Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Got some wispy clouds out, but otherwise a very pleasant day here on Florida's Space Coast as we're gearing up for the first of these 3 launches. We have our full coverage team out tonight. Adam Bernstein is out in the field doing some tracking of this and another mission tonight, doing some still photography as well. Our Michael Kane is also with us this evening, doing some photography today. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at ABurnNYC for Adam and at MD Kane Jr. for Michael. And of course, be sure to give Spaceflight Now a follow there if you are on X. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook simply at Spaceflight Now. We're also getting tracking support this evening from our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs as well. Of course, on the right-hand side of your screen next to Michael, you're seeing a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket at the heart of Historic Launch Complex 39A. But let's go ahead and pivot to our split-screen view, emblematic of what we've got on deck today. See Falcon 9 rockets vertical at both of SpaceX's launch pads here in Florida. On the right, the Falcon 9 at 39A getting ready to launch the Eutelsat 36D satellite on behalf of SpaceX customer Eutelsat. T0 liftoff time of 5:52 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is when we're looking at for this first mission. For our viewers joining us from around the world, that is 21:52 UTC. That is the start of a nearly 4-hour launch window if SpaceX does need that full time, and they have not started fueling. They can use that full width and breadth of that launch window. That's on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left is Space Launch Complex 40, or Slick 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That Falcon 9 rocket is poised to launch the Starlink 6-45 mission, set to lift off at 9:02 p.m. Eastern Time, or 01:02 UTC. For that mission, SpaceX has until 10 p.m. Eastern to launch that batch of 23 Starlink satellites, which don't see here, but what we do know from SpaceX is that a third Falcon 9 rocket, also vertical at Space Launch Complex 4 East over at Vandenberg Space Force Base in Southern California, that is upright in the hopes of launching the Starlink 7-18 mission. Although if you've been with us for the last couple of nights in hopes of seeing that California rocket fly, it has faced some quite literal headwinds and may as well tonight as a nasty storm is moving about in that part of the country. So while we have the stage set for a triple header, don't be surprised if a double is what we come away with. That'll still be quite enjoyable, though, if we get 2 rockets off or if it ends up just being 1. Regardless, we'll be with you for all 3 with live launch coverage. So I would ask a small favor of you, if you haven't already, and you're with us live, one of the more than 2,700 of you that are joining us. First off, thanks for being with us. But if you could hit the like button, that would be a big help in allowing more folks to find this live coverage as we tick on through the hour of this first launch of the evening. We're also powered by our wonderful channel members, so taking a look at the live chat, want to welcome in some folks like Tony Milanix, Jean Marquis, Joshua Guinin, Lori Gilmore, Callistia Lee. I believe I saw Ian Lita, Larry Grove, and many others who are joining us tonight. Mel Roberts Harold. Really appreciate you all being with us. Hello to Eric Scott as well. Joshua King with code. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. The ability to watch all of our Cape-based launches in 4K. And access to member-only videos here on YouTube. We do have word from SpaceX that, quote, all systems are looking good. And you can see right here blue skies with some wispy clouds over Florida. So all things are so far on track for the first launch of the day. That is the Eutelsat 36D mission, getting ready to lift off from historic launch pad here at 39A. As we cruise on in, your T-minus 49 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. About 11 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of propellant load for this first Falcon flight. As we get on into that point, I want to thank a few folks for a good bit of generosity as we kick off this live stream on a very busy launch night. Callistia Lee, one of our channel members, gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you, Callistia, for getting us off on a good footing. Mud Dauber gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. And one of our fabulous moderators, Astro Joe, gifting a Spaceflight Now membership as well. So thanks to the 3 of them. And if you are one of our newest channel members, first off, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia, Astro Joe, and Mud Dauber in the live chat if you are a lucky recipient of channel membership. And want to make a pointed thank you to our wonderful moderators in the live chat, like Rusty Shackelford and Astro Joe, who are joining us this evening, helping us out with live launch coverage. Really appreciate that from the 2 of you. Last but not least, if you'd like to lend your voice to the conversation or support in another way, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature like Bill Sugden did with a £10 Super Chat. Really appreciate that, Bill. If you have a comment or question for us and the crew, and your comment or question is appropriate to be read in our broadcast, we'd love to bring you into the conversation about this or other missions coming up here and around the world. I'll also be keeping an eye out for comments from our members in the live chat, too. As mentioned, we're now less than 10 minutes away from that call on the start of prop load. Because this is not a NASA mission, though, we will actually hear the mission audio call out from SpaceX, but we will rely on our extensive Falcon 9 coverage experience to let you know the visual cues that we're going to be looking for as SpaceX gets into fueling, although they've been fairly communicative today, so there's somewhat of a decent chance that we may hear from them on when fueling has started. Also worth noting a particular historic milestone for SpaceX, them noting that it was 7 years ago today when the SES-10 mission launched. Why is that important, you may ask? Well, that's because it marked the first reflight of an orbital class first stage rocket, kicking off a long and impressive historical list for SpaceX that currently brings us to today, where the Falcon 9 first stage booster on the Eutelsat mission here, tail number 1076 in the SpaceX fleet, is going for its 12th launch today, and it will mark the 259 times a booster has flown after flying at least once, all starting 7 years ago today with SES-10. SpaceX runs its countdown from its Hangar X site here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. While we don't have a lot of good looks inside there, fortunately, when crew missions do roll around, we do get glimpses like this one here inside Hangar X. This first image you're seeing on your screen to the left shows Norm Knight in the foreground. He's the director of flight operations at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. Just beyond him, standing up leaning over the chair with the blue flight jacket, that is Shannon Walker, the deputy chief of the astronaut office, and one of the first astronauts to fly a crew mission aboard a Dragon spacecraft. Shannon and Megan are now enshrined in SpaceX vehicle lore. Like Bob and Doug have the fairing recovery vessels named after them, Shannon and Megan, their names are used for the Dragon recovery vessels that are used to scoop up those spacecraft from the ocean after they splash down off the coast of Florida. Same, of course, with the cargo Dragon spacecraft, I should note. Take another view inside Hangar X. You can see Norm Knight again there on the left-hand side of your screen. In this view, he's talking with Emily Nelson there on the right, NASA's chief flight director. Get a view of the countdown clock there behind them and some of the panel screens that SpaceX used to monitor the countdown process and as they begin flight. SpaceX also has support for this and all of its launches. That support coming from its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, first up to bat with the Eutelsat 36D mission, targeting liftoff of that Falcon 9 vehicle at 5:52 p.m. Eastern, 21:52 UTC. This is a 3-hour, 58-minute launch window, assuming fueling hasn't started. If for whatever reason today's launch opportunity doesn't pan out, they do have another window on Sunday. Same time, same place. As you can see in this image also, weather looking good for tonight's launch attempt. As we also heard from SpaceX, that weather is pretty optimal. Taking this view from our friend Chuck Briggs, you can see boaters out on the water in the Banana River here, taking a look across towards Pad 39A. We are at the tail end of spring break here on Florida's Space Coast, so lots of families taking advantage of some nice temperate weather and fairly calm waters to take their boats out, enjoy some time with their kids, and of course, maybe catch a rocket launch to boot. Weather, according to the 45th Weather Squadron, has a liftoff forecast of greater than 95% odds of favorable weather for liftoff at the window here. Primary concern tonight is for the thick cloud rule, which you can see some clouds hanging around in this wide shot here, but likely nothing prohibitive from a weather standpoint for this mission today. If they do need to pivot to a 24-hour backup opportunity, though, weather is essentially the same, greater than 95% go odds. The only difference is that tomorrow the upper-level wind shear becomes slightly more of a watch item, but not by much. We're now T-minus 41 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. As some birds cruise by our building here at the press site. As noted, this is the Eutelsat 36D mission that is first to lift off from Florida's Space Coast tonight. Satellite for the company Eutelsat that's going to help serve customers in Africa and the Eurasia market. It's set to succeed Eutelsat's current satellite, which is at the 36 degrees east position. That is Eutelsat 36B. You're seeing here on the screen is SpaceX's mission patch for this mission, and you can see a cartoon version of the satellite there at the top of this patch. Here's a different graphical representation of the satellite in its on-orbit configuration. The satellite itself, when it's all buttoned up before flight, measures about 4 meters by 5 meters by 4 meters, or the size of a small truck. You can see this image here from Airbus before it was shipped over to Florida from Toulouse in France. This particular satellite will be heading to geostationary orbit. Communication satellite arrived in Florida on Monday, March 11th aboard Airbus's new Beluga XL plane, which is based on the A330-200 platform. Here's an image of what that loading process looked like, and you can see the nose of the Beluga opening up to welcome in that payload. Landed at the Orlando Sanford Airport before making a quick hop and a skip over here to land at KSC over at Space Florida's launch and landing facility. This is the 22nd geostationary satellite that Airbus has built for Eutelsat. Taking another look at what that satellite looks like. It features 70 physical Ku band transponders and is the fourth satellite to be based on Airbus's Eurostar Neo satellite bus platform. This will help support television customers over in the Africa and Eurasia markets. According to Eutelsat, it will bring them more than 1,100 television channels to, quote, millions of homes. It also has a secondary payload, according to Eutelsat, that is the latest ultra-high frequency payload supporting additional communications capabilities. Right now, T-minus 38 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. Coming up on the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of propellant load for tonight's mission. So as we cruise on into that point, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline for this mission. After that go-ahead is given, if they do get the green light for that, fueling will start at T-minus 35 minutes out with the loading of RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, onto both the first and the second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen is also loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, LOX load starts on the Falcon 9 second stage, but before that we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back as the feed lines are chilled at the launch pad. That event, visually striking, happens about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, give or take. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, and it protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract from the Falcon 9 rocket. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the vehicle. Stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it will clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen load should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director gives their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin 1D engines are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the the command for the hold down clamps to release the vehicle for a T0 liftoff. Again, currently targeting 5:52 p.m. Eastern, 21:52 UTC. As most recently, SpaceX is standing at 29 Falcon 9 flights on the year. Still waiting on our first Falcon Heavy. Last year they got 5 in the air. We believe our first one is going to be coming up, launching the weather satellite for NOAA, that is GOES-U, which will launch now no earlier than June 25th.
Eu tô acompanhando as mensagens que a galera tá mandando na ação Lacta aqui na Avenida Paulista. Agora eu fiquei curiosa e quero saber um pouco mais dessas mensagens.
Oi! Luísa, essa mensagem me tocou demais. Fala só, é uma pessoa que me criou, ela é tudo pra mim. Vai, eu te amo muito!
That launch also happening from this pad you see here on your screen. Historic Launch Complex 39A. We're now T-minus 35 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. Just a few seconds away from the start of prop load here. And hopefully we will get word from SpaceX that fueling has begun. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank a few more folks for their support this afternoon. Cruising on into the evening. Thanks to Pat T for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Pat. Pat says great coverage as always. Well, thank you for helping to support it, make it possible. Channel member Mel Roberts Harrell with a $5 super chat. Good to see you this afternoon, Mel. Who says grand puppies Rufus and Cletus are all set with a couple of their milk bone treats, ready to watch the launches as well. Well, hello to our furry launch viewer friends as well. And thanks to Kevin Campbell for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin, for supporting us on that level. Really appreciate that. Kevin says, great working, SpaceX. We're now T-minus 33 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. At this point, if SpaceX is still targeting that 5:52 p.m. liftoff, fueling will have begun by now. Taking a look here at this punched-in shot at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. Thank you, Stephen. If you take a look near where the transporter erector starts to taper up into the skinnier part there to run parallel to the vehicle, you see that first little slightly lighter gray band near the base of the rocket just above that tapering point. That's about where we usually start to see some signs of vapor and frost forming as the super cold liquid oxygen is loaded onto the Falcon 9's first stage LOX tank. Given the time of day and the brightness, it may be a little hard to see, but we've got multiple cameras at multiple angles to give our best indication that fueling has begun. So we'll go ahead and hang on the shot for just a second, see if we can't see those signs with you. We're now at T-minus 31 minutes, 7 seconds and counting, and it looks like we are starting to see some vapor there, right about where I said we would. Little frost ring beginning to form, indicating that fueling is in fact underway, and SpaceX targeting that T0 of 5:52 p.m. Eastern, 21:52 UTC. So if all continues to remain on course, we will have our first of, again, possibly a Falcon 9 triple header tonight, as we're coming in on the final 30 minutes before liftoff. I want to thank the more than 6,000 of you who are joining us at this point in the broadcast. If you haven't already, we'd love it if you could hit the like button for us. Also, if you're not already subscribed to Spaceflight Now here on YouTube, be sure to do so. It's free, easy to do. And when you do so, click the bell icon and turn on all notifications. That way you're alerted whenever our live streams begin or we post new videos here to the channel. I want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Channel member Dale Y. Pennington. Thank you so much for channel membership, Dale, and thanks for the $2 super chat. Our thanks also to Karen Sharp for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Karen. Really appreciate your support at that level. And I will make a special point to also thank Mary Robinson. Mama Robinson is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to say hello to my mom there in the live chat. Hey, Mom. And thanks for the $20 super chat. Really appreciate that. And happy Easter to all who celebrate as we're kicking off this holiday for many folks around the world. We're now T-minus 29 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. At this point in the fueling process, SpaceX launch teams are also loading helium onto the pressure vessels on the first stage. The cryogenic helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. The same process will begin in just a few minutes at about T-minus 25 minutes when the cryogenic helium is loaded on board the tanks for the second stage. This super punched in view here of the Falcon 9 first stage is courtesy of our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. Really appreciate that shot here, Pete. Gives us a much closer, tighter view of that frost ring as it's starting to form there on the Falcon 9 first stage. A little bit of vapor as the super cold liquid oxygen is hitting the much warmer Florida air. Mentioned we are in spring break here in Brevard County, also known as Florida Space Coast. Taking a look at the live chat real quick, want to thank one of our channel members and fabulous moderators, Astro Joe, for being a channel member for 21 months. Very much appreciate your continued support, Astro Joe, and giving a shout out here to my mom, tagging Mary Robinson, saying, "Thanks for the awesome gift we have with Will." Thank you for the kind words, Astro Joe. And I agree. I very much appreciate being here and being here with all of you on this fabulous Saturday, as we're poised to see maybe 3 launches before the evening closes out. Speaking of launches, let's go ahead and march through what the launch timeline looks like for this mission. Of course, this is a little bit different than your standard Starlink fare that we're used to seeing as the most frequent Falcon payloads on board. This, of course, Utel 36D satellite heading a little bit of different direction, headed to geostationary orbit. So Let's walk through the timeline here. Liftoff, again, targeting 5:52 p.m. Eastern, 21:52 UTC. Following that, about a minute 14 seconds after liftoff, the vehicle will pass through max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. It's followed up at T plus 2 minutes and 30 seconds with first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's followed in quick succession by stage separation, and then the second stage engine ignition, or SDS-1, at T plus 2 minutes and 42 seconds. The payload fairings will jettison just under 3.5 minutes into flight, exposing the satellite to the vacuum of space for the first time. Then at T plus 6 minutes and 18 seconds, the first stage entry burn will begin, that burn lasting 25 seconds. A little bit of a different order here again, because this is a geostationary launch. Then we'll come up to second stage engine cutoff, or SECO-1, at about 8 minutes and 7 seconds into flight. The first stage landing burn begins at T plus 8 minutes and 12 seconds, with a landing on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions coming up at T plus 8 minutes and 36 seconds. The Merlin vacuum engine will reignite for a 61-second burn, minute 1 second. It starts at T plus 26 minutes and 45 seconds, setting up for the deployment of the Eutelsat 36D satellite at T plus 33 minutes and 57 seconds. Unclear at this point in time if SpaceX will continue on with onboard camera views of the Eutelsat satellite through satellite deployment. Assuming that they do, because this is a customer mission, we'll of course stay with you until satellite deployment is confirmed. If they do happen to pull away, then we will wrap up our coverage shortly thereafter. But hopefully, we'll continue to have continued views until that satellite begins its own solar journey.
Little boxes on the hillside. Little boxes.
Mercado Livre, o melhor tá chegando.
We're now T-minus 20 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. About 20 seconds away or so from the start of the so-called big vent, as they chill the feed lines there in preparation for second stage liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9. And there it goes. Another good visual indication that fueling remains on track and on time for that liftoff at 5:52 p.m. tonight. So far it's been a smooth and otherwise unremarkable countdown, which is exactly what you'd like to see when it comes to a launch of any vehicle, really. We're now T-minus 16 minutes, 58 seconds and counting. Closing in on the end of the big vent here in about 30 seconds or less. Again, that'll set up for LOX load on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket at T-minus 16 minutes. And there you see the big vent wrapping up now. And before we go ahead and cruise on into booster history on this vehicle, Want to take a quick look at the live chat and thank a few more folks for their support this evening. One of our channel members, Robin Furbish, with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Robin. Really appreciate your support. Felix JV191 with a $2 super chat. Sounds like they've got a pretty sweet setup for this afternoon's launch viewing. With some chips and dip at the ready. There, go for launch from New Orleans. An easy launch viewing from the Big Easy. Love to see it. And Kevin Campbell with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the support at that level this evening. A little bit of Jess saying, "Can't let you outdo me, Mom." Talking to my mom, of course. We're now about 40 seconds into lock zone on the Falcon 9's second stage. Fueling continues to move smoothly. We're now T-minus 14 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. With less than 15 minutes to go, almost less than 14 now, want to thank the more than 14,000 of you, appropriately, who are joining us for our live coverage this afternoon. And I'll echo channel member Marcus Gallegos, who's been a channel member for 3 months at the Power Leader level. Thank you, Marcus. And echo his comment here, who says, checking in from Alabama. Don't forget to like, follow, and share this wonderful channel. It's also free. Absolutely. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button here on this stream to help more folks find this coverage tonight. And Marcus, you'll have to write back in and let us know from where you're watching in Alabama. I've lived in Mobile, I've lived in Huntsville, and traveled the state many times in between. Holds a very special place in my heart. And of course, it's home to the Rocket City up in Huntsville. A lot of storied legacy there with the Saturn V program. It's also where NASA manages the Human Landing System program, where they are helping to work with both SpaceX and Blue Origin on their landers as part of the Artemis program, bringing humans back to the surface of the moon for the first time since Apollo 17 in 1972. Speaking of rockets, let's go ahead and talk about the booster history of this one. This is tail number 1076, going for its 12th flight today. And while we still have time, let's run through that history, which began back on November 26th of 2022. The launch from this pad that you see here on your screen, 39A. This was Commercial Resupply Services mission number 26, or CRS-26, sending a cargo Dragon spacecraft up to the International Space Station with more than 7,700 pounds of cargo and science in tow. Second launch of this booster was on January 10th of 23. That was the OneWeb Flight 16 mission, second of 3 dedicated launches of OneWeb's satellites for its internet constellation. Of course, after Russia invaded Ukraine, OneWeb lost the Soyuz rocket as a launch vehicle. It then bought 3 flights from SpaceX and 2 from India to launch its remaining satellites. The third launch came on February 27th when this booster launched the first batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites. That was the Starlink 6-1 mission. It was followed up on April 7th when the booster supported the Eutelsat 40E launch. This communication satellite also included a hosted NASA payload called the Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring of Pollution. I know it's a mouthful, which is why you can just think of it as TEMPO. It's a UV visible spectrometer that monitors air pollutants hourly across North America. Can also measure things like ozone, sulfur dioxide, and formaldehyde during the day. At night, it can measure light pollution. Launches 5 through 8 on this booster were Starlink missions. Those were 6-3 on May 19th, 6-6 on July 24th, 6-14 on September 9th, and 6-21 on October 5th. The 9th launch carried the O3B mPOWER 5 and 6 satellites up to medium Earth orbit on behalf of Luxembourg-based company SES. The 10th launch was the Ovzon 3 satellite on behalf of Ovzon. That mission lifting off on January 3rd, 2024. And most recently, batch of 23 Starlink satellites on launch number 11. That was the Starlink 6-40 mission, which lifted off from Slick 40 on Leap Day, February 29th. Which brings us, of course, to today, which in 10 minutes and 10 seconds, we will see the launch of this mission. T-minus 9 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. Taking a look from the view of Pete Karstens is the payload fairings that encapsulate the Eutelsat 36D satellite that'll be heading up to geostationary orbit. Again, this satellite will be replacing the Eutelsat 36B satellite in the 36-degree east position. Less than 2 minutes away from the engine chill down sequence beginning. They will use a little bit of liquid oxygen to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. This is an image from SpaceX's feed showing those 9 Merlin 1D engines I was just talking about. This is a view of the drone ship where they will receive this first stage booster. This is just read the instructions staged in the Atlantic. Taking a look at our live chat real quick. I want to welcome newest channel member Mike G joining us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Mike. Thank you for your support. Thanks to Marcus Gallegos for gifting 5 Spacelight Now memberships and a $5 super chat saying he's checking in from Hanceville. Fabulous to see Hanceville here in the house tonight. Mike G also supporting with a $2 super chat. And Charlie Anderson with a $10 super chat. Thank you to both Charlie and Mike. The engine chill down sequence is now underway here on the Falcon 9 rocket. As we're now closing in on the last 6 minutes of the count, want to pop over this view as SpaceX is going through this video from Eutelsat showing a little bit more behind the scenes of the development and testing of this particular spacecraft. So it's a nice visual representation of what we were talking about earlier on. Satellite about the size of a small truck, as I mentioned, about 4 meters by 4 meters by 5 meters. You see the solar panels going through their test campaign. And there's the Airbus Beluga XL spacecraft or aircraft that I mentioned, taking off from Toulouse and heading over to Florida, bringing that spacecraft with it. Coming out of the final 5 minutes of the count. I want to thank the nearly 27,000 of you who are joining us this afternoon. Have word from SpaceX that both the Falcon 9 rocket and the spacecraft on board are both in good health, which is excellent news to hear. And we also hear that weather is green for today, which means favorable conditions, and there are no weather constraints to launch right now, which are all excellent signs. Coming up on the strong back retract sequence, which should begin right about now. The clamp arms underneath the payload fairings will open up, and the transporter erector will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the vehicle. Shot again from our friend Pete Carson's with Max Q Productions. We'll see the clamp arms opening up, and the transport erector will lean back. Just a second here. Strong back retract sequence in full swing. Before we go ahead and see hopefully a liftoff in the next 3 minutes and some change, let's run through the trajectory real quick. This Falcon 9 rocket is set to lift off again from Historic Launch Complex 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It's heading to geostationary orbit, so it'll fly in an easterly direction away from the pad. The drone ship just read the instructions, ready to receive that first stage booster. We do have confirmation of LOX load complete on the Falcon 9 first stage, which is good. Just second stage loading is left to wrap up. SpaceX has 2 recovery vessels used to scoop up the fairing halves. For this mission, they're going to be using Bob. Coming up on the last 2 minutes before flight here. Promise we'll come back to those with your support in the live chat, but want to thank the more than 33,000 of you who are watching with us live. If you could hit the like button just before we get going to allow more folks to find this live coverage, that would be fabulous and much appreciated. And we do have confirmation of Stage 2 LOX load complete. The Falcon 9 is fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. Coming up in the last minute of the count here, we do have word of ground gas closeouts, which is the venting that you're seeing here on your screen. We should also be hearing the SpaceX launch director give their go for launch in just a few seconds. We'll relay that to you as we hear it. The Falcon 9 is in startup. Coming up at 40 seconds now. And we do have word that we are go for launch. Less than 30 seconds now to the planned liftoff of what could be the first of 3 Falcon 9 rockets to launch. Well, 2 in Florida, 1 in California. Now less than 20 seconds to go. 15 seconds. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Eutelsat 36D mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Soaring past the American flag at the press site, this Falcon 9 is taking flight on a beautiful, sunny afternoon in Florida. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin engines.
Com o novo Eno probiótico, depois de cada ida ao banheiro, você se sente assim. Tome diariamente e ajude a regular sua flora intestinal com a triplação do novo Eno probiótico. O Eno que cuida do seu número 2. Approaches max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure. Falcon 9 is now supersonic, or traveling faster than the speed of sound. Approaching max Q. There's a call out for max Q. Coming into a little more than a minute and a half into flight. A few events are going to be coming up in rapid succession. First stage manage and cutoff will happen in 50 seconds or less. That'll be followed by stage separation about 2 minutes and 34 seconds. And then second stage engine start, SES-1, at T plus 2 minutes and 42 seconds. That'll set up for a fairing deployment at just before 3.5 minutes into flight. Some great views here. This from our tracking camera, I believe. About 15 seconds till MECO. There you see MECO. Stage separation. And Merlin engine start. And some views here from the Falcon 9's onboard cameras, and a gorgeous view of the Sunshine State and of that first stage as it drifts away. A really nice reflection on the Gulf, and you can really clearly see the Indian River Lagoon here in the shot, and the Cape as well. Those hypersonic grid fins on the Falcon 9 first stage deploying there, you can see it from the onboard camera. Those little puffs of bursts you see there are the cold gas thrusters. The fairings should have deployed just a couple seconds ago. You could see those there at the center of your screen, actually. Those objects that are glinting away from the Falcon 9 second stage, those are the 3 dots there on the left-hand side. The top dot is the fairing half. The middle dot is the second stage engine. The bottom dot is another fairing half. On the right-hand side, you can see the Falcon 9 first stage booster as it is making its way down toward the drone ship. Just read the instructions, stationed out in the Atlantic Ocean. Some great tracking work from our team here in Florida. Coming up at T plus 6 minutes and 18 seconds will be the first stage entry burn. So far, everything has gone nominally with this mission, and some fantastic views from both our on-ground tracking cameras as well as the onboard views. See there the Merlin vacuum engine from the second stage onboard cameras. SpaceX will toggle the view from one side of the vehicle to the other to make sure that there's an even burn on this engine on all sides. Vehicle's on a nominal trajectory as the Falcon 9 second stage is cruising towards a geosynchronous, transfer orbit. Now about 5.5 minutes into flight. Our teams on the ground are poised and hoping to be able to catch the... Actually, we may not be able to see the entry burn here just because of how far out the first stage is and its angle.
Vem aí o 4x4 Liquidação Shopee. No dia 4 de abril serão 5 milhões de reais em cupons de desconto, cupons de frete grátis para comprar de tudo. Confira condições no app. 4x4 Liquidação. Olha na Shopee.
You can see the speedometer is still ticking up, and in just a few seconds it will really drop down quite aggressively once the entry burn begins, essentially slamming on the brakes. And there you see the start of that entry burn, and you can watch the speedometer just plummet. There's that end of the stage 1 entry burn. A little more than 7 minutes into flight now. Now coming up, the next event we'll see is the second stage engine cutoff, or SECO 1, in less than a minute at T plus 8 minutes and 7 seconds. That'll be followed by the start of the first stage landing burn at T plus 8 minutes and 12 seconds. This booster that you see there on the left-hand side of your screen, again, making its 12th flight today. A good liftoff. We're standing by to see if it'll make a good landing. You hear a call that stage 1 is transonic, traveling below the speed of sound. now a little more than 8 minutes into flight in real time. The time you're seeing there at the bottom of your screen from SpaceX on a slight delay from this feed. You can see a little wiggle from those hypersonic grid fins, providing some stability and steering for the vehicle. And there's the start of the landing burn. You can see the drone ship coming into view. Should see on-camera view or onboard views on the drone ship on the right-hand side of your screen. Oh, they're just taking the full screen. All right. The landing legs are out. And a little hop there, but a good first stage landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. This was the 289th time a booster has landed. You could see the Eutelsat 36D satellite exposed to the vacuum of space, getting ready to deploy here at T plus 33 minutes and 57 seconds. Before we get to that point, though, we will see another burn of the second stage engine that's coming up at T plus 26 minutes and 45 seconds. That burn, again, will last 1 minute and 1 second. That'll set up for the deployment of the satellite, again, at T plus 33 minutes and 57 seconds. Fortunately, SpaceX has said that they are going to stick with these views and with their coverage until spacecraft deployment, so we're going to stay with you as well. This gives us a little bit of time and breathing room to pop back over to the live chat. Thanks some folks for their support as we get ready to watch the deployment of this satellite there. Want to thank Brent Ravi for $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Brent. Channel member Callistia Lee with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Callistia, who says, show your support for this live stream by clicking the like button. It's free and easy to do. Absolutely, and would be very much appreciated. Thanks to channel member SG as well. Good to see you again this evening. Thanks for the super chat. Don Sullivan with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Don, who says, thanks for your great commentary. Well, thank you for your support of our coverage this evening, Don. Michael Marquez with a $2 super chat saying, greetings from sunny Estero, Florida. Let's go. And to go, indeed, we did. Callistia Lee back again with another $20 super chat, saying beautiful job as always. Thanks to Will, the mods, and all Spaceflight Now for the best coverage. We appreciate all you do. Well, we certainly appreciate you, Callistia, for supporting us in all we do here. So the Tiger with a $2 super chat, saying super good launch for Easter Eve. Happy Easter. And Janine Delasera with a super chat as well. Thank you, Janine. And as we cruise on watching this telemetry view from SpaceX, worth noting that this was in fact the 30th launch for SpaceX, hitting on the 30th day of the third month. And potentially the first of 3 launches that we have on tap for tonight. And of course, as we continue to track the progress of the Eutelsat 36D deployment, also gearing up for our second launch of the day that's coming up at 9:02 p.m. Eastern over at Pad 40, Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You see the rocket is upright and ready to support this mission. This particular Falcon 9 rocket, this is tail number 1067 in the SpaceX fleet, preparing to launch for an 18th time. And it'll be its 14th flight from this particular launch pad. Its other 4 missions lifted off from the one that we just saw launch from, Pad 39A. Taking a peek back at the live chat, want to thank William Schubarg for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, William, and a great name. William says, great job as always from Shelby County, or from Shelby, North Carolina. DT Rot with a $5 super chat. Thank you, DT. Wishing everyone a happy Easter and saying, go SpaceX 30th launch. Yep, number 30 in 2024. Clark Ochikubo with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Clark, who says, thanks for the great coverage and commentary. You're very welcome, and thanks for your support. Jenk330 with a $5 Canadian super chat, saying, from one rocketeer to another, swell job, SpaceX. Looking forward to Starship Flight 4. And yes, SpaceX has been making notable progress towards that 4th integrated flight test of its Starship rocket down there near Boca Chica Beach in southern Texas. Of course, we don't know exactly when it will launch, but SpaceX did conduct a full 6 Raptor static fire test of Ship 29, as well as a single Raptor engine burn test there at the pad in the past about a week or so. SpaceX founder Elon Musk stated that the goal for this mission, as was, of course, one goal for the last time, but one that they were not able to accomplish, but they hope to be able to complete re-entry of the ship upper stage without losing any of the protective heat shielding tiles. So we'll see if they're able to go through that process without those all-important tiles falling off. Currently at T plus 16 minutes, 57 seconds in real time, 16:49 in the SpaceX feed. As we continue to wait for the next second burn before satellite deployment, do want to give you an opportunity to show you a replay of the launch. This coming from our Adam Bernstein. Let's go ahead and take a look back. This is, again, a replay of the launch of the Eutelsat 36D mission as we await the satellite deployment. Again, just a beautiful liftoff here of the Falcon 9 rocket at Launch Complex 39A. This view from Adam's tracking camera here at the press site. Pretty by the books launch for rocket this year. Their 315th Falcon 9 to date. A little bit of shock collar there. And a nice little smoke ring as the Falcon 9 was punching through a thin cloud there, making its presence known as it climbed up into the sunny Florida skies. As we continue to let this launch replay of the Eutelsat 36D mission roll on, again from our Adam Bernstein here. Want to thank some folks for their support this afternoon. Our thanks to Lee Beretta for a $2 super chat saying thanks for the commentary. You're very welcome, Lee, and thanks for your support. I believe this is right before MECO, or main engine cutoff here. Cruising right up to it. Thanks also to Wilson Clan for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Wilson. Channel member CL Sports Picks has been a member for 4 months at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that, CL. CL says great launch, great coverage as usual. Channel member Norwegian Stig with a 50 Norwegian super chat. Thank you so much, Norwegian. It says, great launch, great commentary, good job. Greetings from Norway. Well, greetings to Norway from here in Florida. Appreciate your support. Channel member Nelson Reyes, good to see you again this evening, Nelson. Gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much for the generosity, Nelson. If you are one of our newest channel members here, first off, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And if you would, be sure to thank Nelson in the live chat if you haven't already, to our 5 newest channel members there. Tim Jackson with a £10 super chat. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate your support this evening. Eon Urhasis joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Eon. And Janine giving Adam some kudos with a $2 super chat saying, Adam, awesome video. And hello, Will. Hello, Janine. We're now T plus 21 minutes, 26 seconds and counting into this mission. We are just about 5 minutes away from the second burn of the Merlin vacuum engine SES-2. That burn lasting just a little over a minute, setting up for the deployment of the Eutelsat 36D satellite at T plus 33 minutes and 57 seconds. You see the transporter erector is now back up right there at the pad at Launch Complex 39A, part of SpaceX's protocols for refurbishing the pad and turning it around as quickly as possible in anticipation of the next launch coming right around the corner, which of course is never too far away. But of course, you don't have to wait for another launch from Pad 39A to get another fill of SpaceX launch goodness, as we do have the launch of the Starlink 6-45 mission lifting off from Pad 40, currently set for a 9:02 p.m. departure. And if the weather holds out in California, Starlink 7-18 has been patiently waiting to launch since Thursday. Taking a look at the live chat. Not sure when you popped in there, Stephanie B, but thank you so much for joining us this evening. Always wonderful to have you with us. Stephanie, of course, one of our fabulous moderators here in the live chat, along with Rusty Shackelford and Astro Joe. Taking a look at the live chat here, Stephanie B, speaking of, asking what the blue line on this trajectory map is. That is the upcoming orbit of the second stage. Although it may shift slightly once the pardon me, that is the orbit if the burn does not happen. Getting some onboard camera views there of the second stage, speaking of. That burn set to begin in just about a minute from now. That burn again set to begin at T plus 26 minutes 45 seconds. Again, the time you want to pay attention to, though, is the time at the bottom of your screen where SpaceX's clock is. So the burn will start in about 20 seconds. It will last just a hair over a minute. So far, the vehicle has followed a nominal flight trajectory on this mission. Of course, you saw a good landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. We're about to see the start of that second stage burn. And we got that call out, and visually can see the start of that MVAC engine burn, SES-2, which will last just a hair over a minute here. There'll be a roughly 6-minute coast phase following this engine burn, which we are just about to come up to the end of in a few seconds. And we got the call out for MVAC shutdown. There's a view there of the Eutelsat 36D satellite. Listening for a call out for good orbit insertion. This is again another look at the Eutelsat 36D satellite, giving us an overview of that program. Again, it'll be replacing Eutelsat 36B at the 36° east orbital position, geostationary orbit, about 36,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. It'll provide broadcast capability for customers in Africa as well as the Eurasia market, which you saw there. We're now a little less than 4 minutes away from the deployment of this satellite. I want to thank channel member Marcus Gallegos for a $5 super chat here as we await satellite deployment, asking what holds the rocket up when the strong back retracts. It's a good question. A couple different things keep it where it is. The clamp arms that are holding down the rocket that are released at liftoff are part of that equation, but also when they pressurize the vehicle, that also provides a little more sturdiness on the rocket, additionally helping to keep it in place. Thanks to Nelson Reyes, also channel member with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Nelson. Asking if we'll have a second live stream for the 9:02 p.m. launch, or will you keep this one up? Thanks, Spaceflight Now, for everything. We actually already have that stream up, and it will activate an hour out from launch, so right about 8 o'clock is when we will start that second stream. So feel free to go ahead, enjoy some dinner or whatever you have planned for this evening for a couple of hours, and then we'll see you right back here at 8 o'clock Eastern for the start of that broadcast. SpaceX says they do have confirmation of good orbital insertion for the Falcon 9 second stage, which is good news for this mission. We are now less than a minute away from deployment of this satellite. deployment now less than 10 seconds away. It looks like SpaceX's connection is a little bit choppy, but there we go. Good separation, and we see visually that the Eutelsat satellite is now flying free. And we have a view here now of the other two pads that are going to be supporting launches. On the left is Vandenberg Space Force Base. On the right there was Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Of course, you saw a lot of the clouds hanging around in Southern California, as have been noted by some of you in the live chat. So we will see if the weather actually cooperates for the Starlink 7-18 mission tonight. But of course, SpaceX is gearing up for the Starlink 6-45 mission over at Pad 40, which of course we will have our own dedicated live coverage on a separate stream. Just going to go ahead and bring up a view of that pad, give you one last look at that rocket before we peel away from our coverage here tonight, if we can. You see there are dual view, one empty pad, one pad with a rocket yet to depart from Space Launch Complex 40. Before we close it out, want to give you a little bit of a look at some of our launch photography from our team out here as well. This first shot, a liftoff view of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Eutelsat 36D mission from our own Adam Bernstein here. Falcon 9 soaring beneath Old Glory. This one from Michael Caine here, as well as this lovely streak shot from Michael as well. A light show streaking off into the skies above Florida's Space Coast. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up as we always do with a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. This was the 12th flight of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster. Tail number 1067, or 76, excuse me. 67 is flying next. This was 76 in the SpaceX fleet. This was the 315th Falcon 9 launched to date. The 30th Falcon 9 rocket of 2024. The 259th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 31st launch of 2024, if you include Starship IFT-3. This was the typo there. It was actually 105th launch in the last 365 days. This was the 79th orbital launch from Pad 39A and the 172nd overall launch from this particular pad. Taking a look at the bar chart version of Falcon flights overall. Moving on to recovery stats, this was the 76th landing on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions, the 224th SpaceX drone ship landing, and the 289th overall booster landing. And we are poised to see 290 in just a few hours. Finally, moving out to a global view, this was the 21st orbital launch from Florida this year, the 32nd from U.S. soil, the 35th from a U.S. rocket company, the 60th overall launch from an orbital front around the globe. There have unfortunately been 2 failures, one from China, one from Japan. Let's take a look at the pie chart here as we wrap this up. 59% of launches around the globe driven, of course, by SpaceX. Captured by the United States, China, 13 launches on the year, 22%, followed by Russia with 4, Japan with 3, Iran and India with 2 apiece. And as we wrap things up for this first of as many as 3 launches tonight, I want to make note that you don't have to do anything as you want to cover or be with us for our next launch. Just keep this page up and it'll redirect you to our Starlink 6-45 live coverage, just as a point of note. I want to thank our friends P. Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs for providing tracking support for this mission tonight. Our thanks also to our photography duo of Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane. You saw a couple of their photos here, but if you would like to see more from this and other missions coming up, you can find them at ABurnNYC, MD Kane Jr. on X. Of course, Spaceflight Now is also at Spaceflight Now on X, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. Not currently on TikTok, but maybe we'll talk about that at another time. Or Stephen Young providing technical operations for this broadcast. And most importantly, want to thank you for being with us for round 1 of hopefully 3 tonight. You'll have to stay tuned, launch fans, to see how many more we can tick off before the night closes out. Again, we are T-minus 2 hours, 28 minutes, 55 seconds away from number 2 of the evening, Starlink 6-45. Again, just keep this page up and we will redirect you to that coverage. So you can go ahead, enjoy some dinner. We'll be back with you in about an hour and a half for the start of that coverage. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'm going to go pop a Halls to save my throat for talking for another number of hours this evening. But until then, be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will see you very, very soon. Until then, bye-bye.